In thinking about education in Australia, people like to talk about the funding for this school and that school. They like to talk about curriculum decisions. There might even be debates about which books should be banned in the library. But Fusion's idea is to explore problems deeply, to get at the root cause. And so let's take a step back here. What's the biggest problem with education in Australia? I would argue it's the fact that we're not using our education. Our spending on research and development in Australia is only 1.7% of GDP. The OECD average is 2.8%, almost double that. Why is Australia so far behind? It's not because our population is uneducated. In fact, we're amongst the highest in terms of the proportion of adults who have undergone tertiary education. That might be university or TAFE. We have so many educated adults. We rank above the US, Germany, Israel, even Switzerland. And so how come we aren't investing in ourselves? Why do we keep investing in, speculating on real estate when there could be, we could be making sure that we have a better quality of life going forward, that we have a lower cost of living going forward? The other thing worth noting here is that if we have this educated population, but we're not spending the money on research and development, what are these degrees being used for? Did these people need the degrees in the first place? Or is it a case of credentialism? In the US, it's even more extreme, where, they'll post job ads where they say, this person must have a college degree. Should it be arts? Should it be science? It literally doesn't matter to these hiring managers. Just as long as you have a college degree in something, that's all that counts. And so you see, this is one of the contributing factors to the ever-increasing debts borne by US students. Of course, the other factor here is that sometimes the fees get waived, or subsidised, but it's marketed as being waived. It's other taxpayers paying this money. And so, already students are burdened with huge debts. But now, in the back of their mind, if they have this idea, maybe the president will cancel it out in the future, then of course they're going to be more willing to take on higher debts. And the universities who are trying to load them up with higher debts, they're definitely going to sense this. They're definitely going to raise prices, see if anyone bites, and they do. And so one of the defences against that happening here is, for students to be much more wary. If I study this, is this actually going to be useful? Is this 3 years well spent? Is it $50,000 well spent? One of the ways that Fusion is planning on addressing this, it came up actually in our investigation for our housing policy. We proposed that the government should create a website giving greater transparency into university outcomes. So if someone wants to, say, study mechanical engineering at the University of Melbourne, we can have that data there showing people who took this degree at this university, then 5 years later, what's their job title, what's their salary? And so, anyone going into these courses can see, is this going to create the life outcomes that I was hoping for? And so when parties talk about how they're going to waive HEX fees as though that solves everything, no, the student can still waste years of their life. And so if the degree was legitimately going to be useful, if it was going to create a fulfilling life for them, if it was going to earn them more money, then, did it cost $30K or $0? Does it even make a difference in the scheme of things compared to, some of life's outcomes? The other point I would make about universities is when we think about students leaving high school, going into university, they're at a vulnerable stage of life. In high school, they've been shielded from a lot of the real world effects. They're sort of learning the ropes, and as well, they probably don't have much money. And so a question I was asked recently at a candidates forum was, the cost of living is going to be so high for these students, especially housing. What are you going to do to relieve the cost of living pressure for new university students, for finishing secondary students? And the way that we could achieve this in a way that's sort of most compelling is to lower the voting age to 16. If we think about the housing crisis, for instance, if we think about why these young adults don't have a place to live, The housing crisis is a political choice. It's not inevitable. In our housing policy, you can see all the graphs of house prices around the world. In Germany and Switzerland, house prices are relatively stable. And it's no coincidence there that 50% of the population rents in Germany and Switzerland. And so in Australia, it's only 30% of people who rent. But there's this view that renting, you must inherently be some sort of second-class citizen, that renting is obviously awful, and so why would anyone want to do it? And yet, if we think about Germany and Switzerland, would we really say that these people are oppressed? No, it's totally possible to change the housing scenario in Australia, and it's totally possible to start investing in ourselves, to start creating wealthier, happier lives for Australians with a lower cost of living. So, as you can see, Fusion has some foundational ideas for how to reform education, investment in Australia, creating a wealthier, more harmonious society.
Authorised by Owen Miller for the Fusion Party, Brunswick, Victoria.